Head of Department of Computer Science and Engineering of our institute, Dr. M. Kannan, our learned faculty members, and distinguished resource persons who have graciously accepted to deliver sessions online for this FDP, and learned participants from all over India. Very good morning to all of you. So it gives me immense pleasure to welcome all of you to the ATAL, that is AICT Teaching and Learning Faculty Development Program on Blockchain, a one-week program as already informed by Dr. M. Kannan. So at the outset, I would like to welcome our Executive Director, Dr. Samson Ravindran, a senior academician who is guiding us in all aspects, and also he has accepted to give a felicitation address for this FDP. So I welcome you, sir. I welcome our learned resource person, Dr. Balaji from SSN College of Engineering, for accepting to deliver a wonderful lecture on this technology. Incidentally, he is also our proud alumnus. So I welcome Professor Balaji for this FDP inaugural session. I also welcome other learned resource persons who would be joining, in the course of time as the sessions begin. I also extend my warm welcome to all of them. I welcome our head of department, Dr. M. Kannan, and all our faculty members who are nicely coordinating this FDP. And they have already planned this from, a few months before. And now the AICT has approved it. So they have made a lot of program and preparations and all that. So I welcome Professor Kannan and all our faculty members for active participation and for nice organization of this program. And very importantly, I welcome all the learned participants from all over India. I came to know that around 131 participants have registered for this, ATAL FDP on blockchain. This is one of the 8 emerging technologies as highlighted by NASSCOM, along with artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, and blockchain, which is going to play a vital role in the days to come. So I profusely thank AICT for sanctioning this program for the benefit of all the faculty members all over India. I also thank our management for encouraging us and providing requisite facilities for organizing this program in a befitting manner. So I once again welcome all of you to this online FDP program. So I wish a good success and good interaction amongst all of you. So thanks for giving me an opportunity. I once again welcome all of you to this program. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So now I request our Executive Director, Dr. R. Samson Ravindran, to deliver a presentation.
Beloved Principal Dr. Gowda, the respected resource person, Professor Balaji from SSN College of Engineering, Chennai, the head of department, Dr. Kannan and his team, and dear participants from all over India. It's a wonderful time that AICT has provided us to meet at this platform on this day here to have a meaningful session for next 5 days. This ATAL is providing a base for training as well as learning everywhere throughout the country in many ways. I hope this FDP will definitely help because of its topic, its heading, the blockchain technology. Also, the persons, those who are deputed as resource persons from day one, like Professor Balaji and the team continues. And this learning will be an enjoyable one, not like others. It will be an enjoyable one for everyone. Learning will not stop at any end. Learning is happening everywhere, at every point of our life. There shouldn't be any end for learning because learning should be a continuous process. Really, these ATAL training and learning programs are giving a continuous learning for every time, but I congratulate the team as well as the participants for having given interest in continuous learning of latest technologies. Everywhere, latest technology has to be learned. Devapullavar Thiruvalluvar says always, Vellathaniye malar neetam maandartham ullarthaniye uyar. I correlate this Kural with the recent thing. Ullatanaye means the mind, the knowledge. How knowledge comes? Only by learning. The environment makes us a flood. It is increasing every time. There is a new technology is coming, and influencing the society, the technical society. So the technical education society, particularly the faculty, should enrich their mind, and they should be equipped to come out of all this, and they have to be in up-to-date knowledge. That is called this Vellathaniya Malar Neetam. We have to go up and up every day. And I hope these 5 days will give you the higher edge to go up and up every time, every day. That too, I am really congratulate the team, Dr. Kannan and his team from the Mahendra Engineering College, one of the premier institute of our educational group, where we have 5 engineering colleges, 1 polytechnic college and 1 arts and science college. Out of these 3 are autonomous colleges and NIRF ranked colleges, as well as we have all other feathers in our cap. But all comes only the backbone of the teaching fidelity. So I wish all the participants from not only from this region, this state, or this people, but I'm very happy that every participants are coming from all over India, and I am really appreciate everyone, because you should have the higher edge all the time. You should come out of the flower, how the flower comes when the flood is increasing in height. The flower is coming up to the level of height. So you should have the attitude of learning on every day, because learning is a continuous process. I wish you all the best for the next 5 days. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. So it is a wonderful thing, sir. So hopefully we will motivate the people. So this is the best thing on the blockchain part. We do got some of the other proposals, other sanctions order from the ACTE. So that is on IoT on blockchain also, sir. So that program also we got sanctioned. So hopefully we will continue that particular thing, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Nice, sir.
And I request all the participants. So every day we will share the link to you. So you can join in that particular part. So that session, everyday sessions will be marked with the attendance. So we will share the Google form. So you can post your attendance over there. And every day we have to post the content to the Atal portal. So your attendance and everything. So once if it is completed, then at the end we will conduct a test. After completing the test, you have to give a feedback to the portal. So once if you have submitted your feedback, you will get a certificate on that. So on our part, so today is the first day which Mr. Dr. Balaji is going to deliver the session on your fundamental part, right? So and we focused on much more on the practical oriented, so instead of theory part. So that's what we planned. So Balaji sir is also joined, right? So now let me introduce Dr. Balaji. So Balaji is serving in the academy, so for more than 16 years. So and hope that please we are celebrating our silver jubilee on 6th of this month, that is September 6th, right? So our college is 25 years old colleges, right? So and Balaji is one of our alumni, so who is going to give a talk on this particular day. So he is having more than 16 years of experience, and he completed his PhD in Anna University on the area of trust-based routing approach for MANET. And he is currently interested in the research areas and application of the IoT and blockchain technologies. So this is what his focus areas at present. And he is a research scholar. So he produced some 2 PhD holders, and then some 4 people submitted their. So 4 members submitted. Just a minute. So 4 members submitted the thesis, and another 4 members are doing their thing. And he is also a BOS member, so in various universities and various colleges, and DC member also. So, and he is a recognized proctor of CompTIA, that is Global Certification Agency's examination. So he is actively involved in the industry consultancies on HCL Tech, and on the other part, on the Tamil Nadu government part also, he is associating for some of the blockchain projects. Right? So they are doing that particular thing. So not only that, on the academic side in the SSN, I hope that you people know that SSN College of Engineering, which is one of the famous institutions in Tamil Nadu, right? So which is run by HCL Shivanada Group, and he is a online internship coordinator for the Carnegie Mellon University USA for their students, and he has published so many articles and so many papers. And on coming to the blockchain part, so he completed some University of Buffalo and University of California, Michigan, and certified blockchain associate member, and he also certified in IBM and then Udemy. And not only that, on the cyber security part also, he certified in the EC Council CSCU. Now I request Dr. Balaji sir to handle the session.
Sir, thank you, sir. You can call me Balaji, not Balaji, sir. So
Thank you.
it gives me different feeling. So thanks again. I know Kannan sir for more than 20 years since from my college days, and as they all said, I'm a proud alumni of Mahindra Engineering College. I passed out in 2002, and then I did my PG and PhD, and I'm serving in academia for more than 16, 17 years. So leave out all other credentials. The one thing which I would always like to label myself is I'm an active learner and enthusiastic learner. That is the only thing which I would like to call me. And as Sir has given the prelude of the today's talk, I'll be talking about blockchain, and I'll be giving you the strong fundamentals of blockchain. Am I audible to you all? Sir, am I audible?
Yes, audible. Balaji.
Okay, sir. So I'll share the screen. I'll be, see, Sir mentioned that today it will be more of fundamentals and theoretical part, but I'll try to show you some demos. And off the line, I'll pass on some codes to Sir. You can also get it from him. Majorly, I work with Python and Hyperledger. So whatever projects we have done here among our work group, I'll be sharing the code with them. You can also get the code from Sir off the line. Today, I'm not going to talk about any implementation. I'll be sticking on to explaining you the history of blockchain and what it is. And then I'll be showing you some demos. And finally, in the last session, since we are all faculties, we can also discuss about the research directions available in the blockchain. This will be my plan today. I'll be sharing my screen. So, sneak peek on our blockchain. The preview of lecture will be, I'll be talking about the second era of internet. During my talk, I'll relate why we need to throw light on second era of internet. And basically we will try to demystify what is blockchain and what are the other principle or technologies which play integral part of blockchain. So when we say blockchain, it's not mere blockchain. It has a lot of internal concepts which we need to get familiarized to understand the functioning of a blockchain. Likewise, when we talk about machine learning, we know the core machine learning requires some amount of prerequisites with respect to statistics and data analysis, right? So likewise, here blockchain is not an individual entity, it is an ecosystem. It is a framework to understand that framework or to decode that framework, we need to know a lot of internal concepts like hashing algorithm, immutability nature of distributed computing and distributed P2P network. And we have basics of mining. Beware, the mining what I'm talking here is not about data mining. It is completely a Bitcoin mining or a mining which is part of a Bitcoin based blockchain. I'll explain you. Very importantly, consensus algorithm. And finally, I'll be throwing you light on what are the places where blockchain is existing. So we have been giving a lot of hype. Principal also mentioned about the 9 or 7 identified areas of AICTE. With respect to blockchain, is blockchain really a hype or a reality? That we will try to decode at the tail end of the session. So introduction, I welcome you all to the cosmos of blockchain. This is the buzzword which is making news in all corners. Today's session, we will try to decode whether is it a technology or a culture or a process change, and how blockchain is able to achieve things quite faster, how Bitcoin is linked to blockchain. Please understand, I underline this word, Bitcoin belongs to the broader ecosystem of blockchain or broader family of blockchain, wherein Bitcoin alone is not a blockchain. I think this session or this program is correctly coined towards Ethereum, because as an academician, I personally feel we have a lot of role to play with by using Ethereum and smart contracts in blockchain rather than looking into Bitcoin. But we need to understand or we need to learn Bitcoin in protocol. So to that extent, Bitcoin is very important in the ecosystem of blockchain. And we will see what are the research areas which we can focus on blockchain. Some facts. Recently, Walmart was able to reduce a food tracking process from 6 days to about just 2 seconds by leveraging blockchain. You know what is Walmart? Walmart is one of the biggest supply chain company or a kind of supermarkets. We colloquially call it as a supermarkets. They are the worldwide global supermarkets. They have a lot of items, commodities, which always keeps on moving. They were able to recently track the food tracing process from 6 days to just 2 seconds. Imagine the impact of increase in speed. So that is one important aspect which always hits us on face when we talk about blockchain. The other thing, blockchain is expected to disrupt the banking and financial soon. Experts claim banks save around $8 to $12 billion annually by leveraging blockchain technology. And again, we will have a strong debate on whether blockchain is going to replace the banking system or not. But before that, now in the current scenario, the banks have started adopting blockchain as their part of their functioning. So by doing so, they are able to save around 8 to 12 billion annually. We will see what are the banks which have started using blockchain in their functioning. And then you can always Google and see Gartner's survey, not only for blockchain. Being an IT professional, being a computer science teachers, academicians, we can always rely on Gartner's survey for say, if I want to know what are the tech languages which will dominate the next decade, I can search Gartner's survey. Or what are the 10 technologies which are going to make better impact on the digital side? I can always go to Gartner's survey, Google Gartner and the results. Gartner survey is, I'll suggest, it's a survey company which does survey among all different stakeholders in a particular area, and they come up with some kind of findings. Some of the findings: by 2023, blockchain will support the global movement and tracking of 2 trillion goods and services annually. That is the estimate. But again, don't mistake me, I am not a marketing executive for blockchain. These are all the facts which are available in the digital forum. There are some technologies in our lifetime we have seen, most probably the people who started the research or who have got into this academia in the early 2000 or the late 90s, you would have witnessed a great area which we prospered during that time called grid computing. Today, where is grid computing? We don't know. So there are some areas which comes up and creates a huge hype and they go unnoticed. I mean, again, I'm not getting into the debate why grid computing could not prosper. we have leveraged grid computing as a part of, see, the core concepts of grid computing are still valid. I'm not against grid computing. So even cloud computing, if you look into the cloud, probably the hype which created by cloud has not lived up to its expected standard. Again, I can understand that cloud has intruded into our day-to-day life. I'm not denying it. I'm talking in the research perspective. If you say today, I'm going to work on cloud, the immediate response will be you have to compete with the huge giants like Google, Amazon, and so on, because they come up with huge findings on day-to-day basis. So if I want to contribute something in the cloud side, I have to compete with them. I have to come up exceedingly higher than what they contribute to the global. So these are all few challenges. But blockchain, there are a lot of places where still, to my knowledge, I see we can play a role. We can play a very greater and monumental role. I'll come to it. And my dear friends, you can always stop me and ask questions. And in between, I'll also stop and ask you questions. Please make this as an interactive one. Don't give me a feeling that I'm sitting in a room and I'm talking to, I'm talking to the mission. Give me a feeling that we are all part of it. And you can always stop me at any point of time. I'm always ready to accept or ready to welcome your questions. Don't worry about the nature of question. Even I'll be happiest person to answer a silly question or a stupid question. I'm always open for it. Then blockchain, the technological revolution. So if you look at the blockchain, the technological revolution, you can see here the technological revolution. What we are going to see is, so blockchain, I have placed blockchain in the middle because I'm giving a talk on blockchain. Okay, but that's the reality. If you are a person who are doing a research in IoT, you can also place IoT in middle. Or if you are a person who is doing a research in machine learning, you can place the machine learning in the middle. I don't have any objection. The point what I'm trying to convey from this slide is, today, if you look at the current stage, we have started integrating the different technologies together. The days have gone where we tend to differentiate the technologies. If you look at the history of hardware or the emergence of computing, you can witness that it all started with carbon tubes, and then we moved on to semiconductors, then to transistors, then to VLSI, and so on. So that was the period where hardware was emerging separately and software was emerging separately. And there was one period where the companies like IBM and other companies, they came together, they integrated this hardware and software, and today we are witnessing what revolution or what kind of impact they have created. But again, that was the period where differentiating the technologies was happening. They were all basically differentiating it. Now, in the industry 4.0, it is all about integration. The industry 4.0 talks about integration. Can you imagine machine learning without data? Can you imagine big data without machine learning? That is, I have huge amount of data. As you all know, the Amazon founder of or the owner of Amazon came up and said a very famous quote: "Data is the next fuel." Right? So the country or the society which is having more data will be the one which will be prospering in the next era. So I have a huge data. I have a surplus amount of data, and there are some findings which says that the amount of data what we have accumulated till 2004, we have accumulated, now we are accumulating in just 3 days. Now you can understand the amount of data which we are accumulating every day. So mere data, will it give me anything? No, mere data is not going to be of any use for me. I need to apply an algorithm, I need to predict something, or I need to come up with some kind of analysis. Okay, how will I get the data? Data, I cannot get the data as such. Even though data is available across all the spectrum of society, I need devices to collect the data. That's where the mobiles come. That's where the drones come. Okay, so these are all the different resources. That's where the social web also comes. So these are all the technologies which are going to act as a feeder for me. Even IoT. IoT is one of the biggest feeder of data. What do we do in IoT? We deploy a sensor, we collect the data. Is it enough that if I collect the data? No, I have to process that. That's where machine learning comes into picture. So This is done. Where will I store all the collected data? That's where the cloud comes into picture. So the storage, I need not to rely on a hardware infrastructure. I cannot keep on piling up hardware every day. So what am I going to do? I'm going to depend on the cloud. So cloud is the place where I'm going to deposit all my data. So now you can understand these are all integrated. I cannot see success of an individual technology without leaning on shoulder of another technology. Am I right? Do you have any point to say here? Do you have any point to say? Okay, so if you don't have anything, I'll continue. Is it a hype? This is what we discussed. Leave out the second slide, it's repeated. The first, I mean, you can see here, Internet of Information, Internet of Content, and Internet of Value. I'll come to that. Internet of Content is blockchain inspired, and the Internet of Value is blockchain complete. We will see what is Internet of Value. Why blockchain? See, these are all the top. So these are all the top emerging jobs. You can see here, blockchain developer, AI specialist. So blockchain developer is also one of the top emerging jobs. I don't.
With Sublime on heating.
तो दोनों Sublime होने चाहिए ना?
नहीं नहीं.
क्योंकि
So I asked you to unmute to talk to me, not to talk among yourself. Thank you, madam. So blockchain developer is one of the hottest job which is available in the market. See, I'm not again talking only about blockchain. There are other jobs which I have posted here. You can see AI specialist, also an important job. A robotics engineer, cyber security specialist. These are all integrated. So when I say blockchain developer, he cannot exist alone. He needs data. He needs language. He needs backend. So blockchain developer is an again, but what I'm trying to say here is blockchain developer role is being defined in the industries, and they have started looking out for people. It's a high time that we take this technology to the students so that we can also equip them to face the industrial challenges. Internet of Information. You can see here, the first era of internet was focused on Internet of Information. First era of internet. We call this as a first era of internet. The first era of internet was focused on information. What is information? You can see here, photos, websites, docs, documents, PDFs, emails, and PPTs or slides. Okay. The aspect of this information is when I share a photo, I retain the original and I share only the copy of it. Am I right? Likewise, when I share a PDF, I retain the original. Whenever I share an information internet, I retain the original and I share only the copy of it. Am I right? When I send an email, the email copy is with me. I send an email, that's it. I'm sending you a copy. When I share a photo, I still have the original copy of it and I share only the duplicate or a copy of it. So this is what was prevalent in the Internet of Information. So we retain the original and share the copy. But what about this Internet of Value? This is what second era is all about. This is what was inspired by blockchain, second era of internet. What is this? You can see here we are talking about values. What does this value corresponds to? You can see what are the values. We are talking about money. We are talking about intellectual property. We are talking about contracts, financial assets, vote, the normal voting process, the art, music, energy, and so on. So can I still apply the same principle of retaining the original and sharing the copy? Can anyone say, will you accept? For example, I say, I am going to share rupees 100 with Kannan sir. But I'll be retaining the original. So original will be with me and I'll be only sharing the copy to him. Original with me Only copy to sir. Is this a valid transaction? Will anybody accept this? You have to say me, because if you say it in a chat, I will not be able to see. You can unmute and you can say.
No, sir. No, sir. We will not accept.
Yeah.
No,
Yes,
no.
we will not accept. Yeah, thank you. So this is what Internet of Value is all about. This is what we are going to discuss today. So the second era of Internet advocates about Internet of Value. We are going to add value to the Internet. Okay, that is what basically inspired from blockchain. We will see how blockchain helps us in achieving this Internet of Value. Middleman. This is a very, very, very important concept. Even the second era of the first era of Internet, when we started the Internet, the objective of the Internet was democracy or democratic. Can you say me whether the present status of Internet is democratic or centralized? If you say your answer, give me a justification. Is it centralized or democratic? Any answers?
Take, because
Yeah.
it me whether I share it with him or not, or with whom I share. So it is not democratic.
Okay. So I'm not even talking about Internet of Value. What I'm trying to say here is, for example, Facebook, Amazon, Google, the earlier Yahoo, these are all the giants. Microsoft, these are all the giants who dominate the internet field. Is there any space for an ordinary person to pop into internet and prosper? It's going to be a huge challenge. I don't say that there are no possibilities, but what I'm saying is the possibilities are very lean. Now today, you know, we can't compete with Amazon. We can't compete with Facebook. We can't compete with Google. For say, if you take Google, Google almost has occupied all part of our life. Google knows today I'm sitting here and I'm delivering a talk. And Google knows you are all sitting in your place and listening to this talk. So that is the extension upon which these major players have intruded into our privacy. So that is what I'm trying to say. Even though the first era of internet was coined or oriented towards democracy or democratic spreading, but it did not happen. So that is what we are trying to see, whether second era of internet, are we able to create that democracy? I'll say a very simple scenario. Today, if say, for example, Google shuts down their entire process, what will happen to our data? Do we have any claim over our data? Is it possible for us to get our data if Google shut down their server today?
No, sir. No, sir.
No, no way. This is what, yeah, this is what I'm trying to say you now. What
So
will
there
happen
is
to the, yeah,
Yes.
please.
Yes, sir. I think centralized, sir, as per that.
Yes, it's completely centralized and monopolized, sir. That is what I'm trying to say. It's completely centralized, because I'll say I can understand that you'll be posting me the question like, what is the solution for this? I'll give you I'll give you answers for all those things. So this is what second era of internet is all about. And middleman, leave out internet. Middleman is everywhere, right? Middleman is everywhere. Let us take a normal bank transaction. Let us take a normal bank transaction. I want to send money to my friend. Let's say my friend is sitting in Salem and I'm sitting in Chennai. I want to send money to him. How can I send? Let's say this is Balaji and this is my friend F. So if I want to transfer the money, I have to check my bank. From my bank, I have to send the money. And from my bank, that is bank B, it will go to bank F. And from bank F, it will go to my friend. So this is what I'm saying as a middleman. You may be wondering, how can we transfer money without the help of bank? We will also find the answer for that in the due course of the lecture. So middleman is everywhere. Middleman is there in internet. Middleman is there in transaction, financial transaction. Middleman is there in government transactions, and everywhere we have a middleman. So this is what I'm talking about. Even leave out bank, at least bank we can accept. You all know about payment gateway companies, right? What does this payment gateway companies does? Even if I want to transfer money, if I want to, let's assume that I'm going to purchase an item from Amazon. How will you do the digital transaction? It will ask you whether are you going to do it with the Visa or MasterCard. Am I right? So these are all the payment companies, RuPay, JustPay. So these are all the payment companies which also act along with our bank. So apart from this bank, there are one more middle layer where these kind of payment gateway companies also comes into picture. So we will also see a simple example like how this middleman play a role in a normal transaction. So second era of internet, here where we are talking about blockchain, and blockchain advocates no banking concept. I'll talk about it in a bit later. Trust protocol. So the entire transactions what we are talking now, may it be an email transfer, or may it be a document transfer, or may it be a value transfer, whatever be the nature of sharing, the bottom line upon which we do all this transaction is trust. So what, I mean, I need to have a basic trust, right? I'm sending an email to one of the participant today. So I need a trust. I'm trusting this email server. For example, let's imagine that I'm going to use the Google for sending an email. So I rely on the Google that my email will be reaching the target audience or the target person. So entire digital process is happening on the basic structure of this trust. So what is the importance of this trust in this kind of digital entity? So blockchain advocates creation of a trust among unknown entities. That is the specialty of this blockchain. We are not only talking about creation of a trust among the known entities. See, among the known entities, we can very easily establish a trust. Trust is a very big topic again. You can digitize with respect to digital trust. Let's take a typical example of a Facebook. If I want to accept a friendship request from a person A, then now what we normally tend to do, we tend to see who are all our common friends. If we have if I find one of my trusted friend is friend of him, then it's quite easy that I'll accept him as a friend. Or if any of my wife's friend is giving a request, I may not have a choice, I have to accept, but still he knows my wife, so I can easily trust, and I'll accept him as my Facebook friend. So trust play a very, very vital role in this digital transactions, and believe me friends, it is going to play a more major role when we are going to talk about this IoT and blockchain. So trust play a very vital role. And what are the researchers, or what are the areas where we have explored trust? So trust is an important component of blockchain, and blockchain establishes trust among unknown entities. This you will understand again in the due course of the lecture. Among unknown entities, I'm not talking about known entities. I may not know any one of you here in the talk today, but still I can trust, I can communicate, I can transact. How? We will find the answer. The Wikipedia definition of blockchain. There are a lot of definitions. One such definition is open distributed ledger that can record transactions between two parties efficiently and in a verifiable and permanent way. This is one form of Wikipedia definition. Blockchain is a continuously growing chain of records called blocks, which are linked and secured using cryptography. Continuously updated record of who holds what. So these are all different definitions are available. Let's not bother too much about the definitions. These are all the Wikipedia definitions. When we talk about blockchain, we cannot directly go to the blockchain. We have a lot of historical work which has happened before the emergence of blockchain. You'll be surprised to know the Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies, what we are talking today, they are only the current scenario existence. If you look at the history, see, the important concept for blockchain is cryptography. The cryptography is the underlying concept upon which we are going to establish the trust. We will discuss that. So cryptography plays a very vital role in blockchain, and you all know cryptography is there existing for more than a century and before. Second, you can see here David Chaum. He is David Chaum. David Chaum published the idea of anonymous electronic money in 1983 in his paper. You can imagine, in 1983 itself, David Chaum came up with the paper. For the first ever time, he talked about DigiCash, or the digital payment or digital cash. He talked about digital cash in the year 1983. So in 1983 itself, the discussion for this kind of digital cash happened. And if you look back the ancient history, how we were transacting even before the money came into existence. You all know about barter trading, right? In Tamil, we call it as a Pandamatru Murai. So barter trading was the one where I used to give my, for example, if I want to get coffee seeds from Brazil, probably I may be coconut. In exchange of coconut, I may be getting the coffee seeds, and so on. So this is the barter trade which was happening in the very ancient history period. So there also, if you see, there were no third parties, there were no cash, there were no middleman. It was all directly between the seller and the consumer. So DigiCash or digital cash or the cryptocurrencies came into existence or came into discussion in 1983 itself. And then interestingly, David Chaum started a company called DigiCash in 1989. But unfortunately, it went bankruptcy in 1998. But if you look into the history, in 1993, when Microsoft was emerging, Microsoft was in discussion with David Chaum for using this DigiCash for the transactions. DigiCash, or they registered the trademark as eCash. So Microsoft was contemplating to use eCash for the transaction, but unfortunately, during that time, they didn't have the technological support to carry out this idea. That is the major reason why Microsoft backed up from this idea, and eventually DigiCash also went bankruptcy in the year 1998. This is one of the history which you have to remember. And another important person, Nick Szabo. Hopefully you are going to study smart contract and Ethereum. So Nick Szabo is the man who coined the word smart contract for the first ever time in his paper, which came up in the year 1998. He came up with a paper where for the first ever time he coined this word smart contract. He is considered to be the father of smart contract, Nick Szabo. And interestingly, in his paper, he proposed a protocol called, excuse me. Yeah, thank you. So he proposed a protocol called God protocol. So by God, he meant ideal protocol. He went one step ahead. Earlier, we were talking only about trust protocol, but this paper, in Nick Szabo's paper, he talked about God protocol. What does this God protocol stands for? It stands as an ideal protocol, which will not have any weakness, which could not be altered, or it is not vulnerable. It is foolproof. That is his claim. That was his claim. Okay, so God protocol was the one which was advocated in the paper, which came up in the year 1998, published by Nick Szabo. So Nick Szabo, you will also come to know his name when we are talking about smart contracts. So then it came to digital timestamping. If you see digital timestamping, these two gentlemen, Scott Stornetta and Stuart Haber and Scott Stornetta, they came up with the concept of digital timestamping. The technology was originally described in 1991, and that came again as a paper, research paper, how to timestamp a digital document. That was the paper which he published. They published in Journal of Cryptology in 1991, which again for the first ever time talked about digital timestamping, that is timestamping of digital document. So whenever there tends to be any digital document, it gets timestamped. You can see here any document gets timestamped. Very common example again, I need not to go too much. You can take your emails. Do you have timestamp on your emails? Yes or no?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We are having.
Yeah.
Yes.
And even can you say the present day use of digital timestamping? How this digital timestamping play a very, very important role in crime investigations? When you talk about crime investigation, what comes to your mind?
For location and the time of the event has occurred.
Yeah. From where will you get the resource? You will be see very commonest sources our video cameras, that is CCTV cameras. Am I right?
Yes, sir.
CCTV,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
CCTV cameras are very widely used to investigate the crimes. So when you look at the CCTV cameras, you know at what time a person has entered a particular location or not. So they stand as a digital evidence. They nowadays you all know it is also accepted as a witness or evidence in the law procedure. It's accepted in the court as a witness. So through that, the cybercrime team are able to investigate the crime. So timestamp has gone from a normal digital application even to the level of identifying whether a person is convicted or whether a person to be convicted or not. So by this, you can understand to what extent the timestamping has created a impact in the way in which we do a digital transfer. Again, coming to a colloquial transactions, for example, if I say that I have sent a mail to my colleague by at 2 o'clock, it can be very easily verified because once they receive the mail, once they open the mail, it will very clearly indicate that at what time I have sent the mail. So I cannot tamper or I cannot say a lie with respect to a digital transaction. This is what is applicable for banking transaction also. When I say that I have transferred the money to so and so, I can show them the proof along with the time so that they can understand that this is the instance at which the digital transaction has taken place. So that is the importance of this digital timestamping. And one more request, kindly pardon me. I may be attending some official phone calls in between, and by 10:25 I'll be. I have to upload my question paper for the test in LMS. So we also started working. So in case if in between I have to fulfill my official duties, so during that time alone I'll be leaving the talk and I'll be doing that. So kindly excuse me for that alone. So coming back here. So this is what digital timestamping is all about. And then the important concept, the birth of Bitcoin. So the Bitcoin came into existence in the year 2008 from a paper called a Bitcoin peer-to-peer electronic cash system in the name of Satoshi Nakamoto. Why I say in name of Satoshi Nakamoto? Till today, nobody knows who is Satoshi Nakamoto. Whether he is a male or female or whether a group of people, we don't know anything. Or whether it is a digital entity, we don't know all those things. So even today, we don't know the whereabouts about Satoshi Nakamoto, but there was a paper which came in the name of Satoshi Nakamoto, and it talked about a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. So this was the paper for the first ever time. It talked about no banking system. That is, he proposed an idea where we completely eliminate bank transactions or bank between our transactions. For example, A wants to send money to B. A will directly send the money to B. In the earlier example, you recall, if A wants to send money to B, then A has to contact his bank, that is bank A. Then from bank A, it will be going to bank B, and from bank B, it will be going to the user, or I mean the target audience, that is B. Wherein here, the Bitcoin concept, he talked about transferring money directly from A to B. How it is possible? We will see that. But this is the concept of Bitcoin. Keep it in mind, and I'll also connect this with the historical happenings. Just give me 1 minute time. I'll upload my question paper in the LMS and I'll come back. Yeah, thank you. So we have a CAT exam, so we have to share the question paper. That's what I was doing. Can you all hear me?
Yes, yes, Balaji.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you. So coming back here, Satoshi Nakamoto paper came in the year 2008, which for the first ever time in the history, he talked about no banking system. So what is this no banking system? It may be ridiculous for you to hear this word. How can we eliminate a bank from any kind of transaction? Yes, we can do. That is what cryptocurrencies are trying to advocate. We will also see the reason. I mean, why this paper got popular, and very important point. So this was the year 2008 Bitcoin paper came into existence, and we have to accept one truth. This paper gave rebirth to blockchain, or it gave birth to blockchain. Blockchain, as you all now know, in different form, they were existing from 1990s, right? There was eCash, which got flopped, and digital timestamping of digital document came into existence in 1991. And in 1998, Nick Szabo talked about smart contract. So all these things were happening in bits and pieces. But after this 2008 Bitcoin paper, they all came under single umbrella, and that's where blockchain got emerged. So we have to thank Bitcoin paper for emergence of blockchain. So that is inevitable fact. But whether you ask me whether blockchain and Bitcoin are same, no, they are not same. There are a lot of internal intricacies which are available within blockchain. Bitcoin is one among them. So if I want to say, if you want to look into blockchain, blockchain can also be seen in different perspectives. Different perspectives include, for example, blockchain, we can approach blockchain in the first thing, that is cryptocurrency. Second, it can also be seen as a form of spot contract. So Bitcoin Bitcoin comes under the category of cryptocurrency, whereas smart contract is the place where the developers comes into picture, and that's the place where they do codings. And third one, you can also use blockchain for trustable data storage. You got it? So these are all the different areas. In case if you want to learn blockchain, you can take these three routes. One is cryptocurrency, next smart contract, and third one is data storage, or we call it as very colloquially, the industries or the so-called websites will call it as DLT, distributed ledger technology. DLT, they call it as distributed ledger technology. These are all the three areas which you can focus on. To know or to get into these three areas, you have some prerequisites which you have to learn. That is what I'm trying to give you today. So we will come back again. See, Satoshi Nakamoto, remember his name. I'll come again. So internet and blockchain. There is a famous, comparison. What internet has done to text. You all know how internet has changed the way in which we do testing. Text, we use the text. The quite common examples are WhatsApp, telegrams, and so on, right? So these are all the way in which internet has made us to see the text in a different way. Images, I need not to say Instagrams, Google Photos, iPhotos, and so on. And programs, we live in an era where sharing has become the global phenomena. So GitHub. So nowadays we don't hide our code, we post it in the GitHub. If I want to get a recognition, I should not keep my code with me. I have to post it in the GitHub. So once the people come to know that I'm capable of coding such kind of functionalities, then I may get some value. So GitHub is the place where we are democratizing, we are communizing the programming concepts. Video, I need not to say YouTube and lot of other video functionalities you can come out. See, there is a prediction that in next 5 years there will be a YouTube university. Already people have started learning from YouTube, and YouTube is started making a huge impact on the learning process. So quite soon we may come across some universities which could merely exist in YouTube. They need not to have a physical campus at all. So these are all the impact of internet over these areas. Likewise, they also predict that blockchain will change the way in which we look at where we do the money transfer. So how we transfer money, blockchain will play a role in that. How we negotiate contracts. So contract, it is a piece of document which is exchanged between two parties upon a common agreed terms. That is what contract is all about. So how are we going to negotiate contracts in the near future? How are we going to store the patents, intellectual property rights? How are we going to track the assets? Asset tracking, how are we going to do with the help of blockchain? So these are all the places where blockchain is poised to make huge change. So they see that, or they expect that blockchain will change the way in which we do all this work. And I'm not saying it. This is the former. Right now, he's not the CEO. Ginni Rometty. What the internet did for communications, blockchain will do for trusted transactions. These are all the expectations from the people from IBM and Google and so on. So this is a very, very important slide in the entire course of lecture. Fits. Where should you think of using blockchain? Where blockchain shall be thought of be used. See, blockchain is there. I know blockchain. It doesn't mean that I should use blockchain everywhere. Or it doesn't mean that we can think of, or we should use blockchain everywhere. No. We have to, you think of using blockchain wherever you find there is a opportunity for fraudulent transaction or fraudulent interference. Second point, you should think of using blockchain where you feel that intermediaries or middleman will come into picture. So that is the second feature where you can think of using blockchain. Third, wherever you want the throughput to be stable, because the speed is contradictory. If I say the transactions in the blockchain are very speed or very faster, then I'm lying to you. They are not actually eventually faster when compared to other transactions, but in some kind of transactions, logistics or supply chain or healthcare, stable throughput is required. So those are all the places where you can think of blockchain. Finally, wherever you need a stable data, where you find an application where the data need to be stable, then you can go for a blockchain. Otherwise, don't go for a blockchain. This is the takeaway from this slide. Again, I repeat, you all know, usually students come up with Excel. They apply machine learning algorithms everywhere. If you look into their data set, it will be a mere 10 entries in the Excel file, but still they would have applied the machine learning algorithm. They are not justifying the algorithm, or they are not justifying the data set. So likewise, in blockchain also, you should not jump to blockchain because you are interested, or you have an acquaintance with the blockchain. Whenever there is a necessity, conditions like fraudulent or intermediaries or throughput, or wherever you require stable data, then you can think of using blockchain. Now I think I'm trying to connect some dots. If you recall, I said about middleman. Wherever you find a middleman, then there is a chance that blockchain can come into picture and it can eradicate that middleman. So that is the common point. So now we will see any doubts here so far. Any doubts so far? Shall I proceed? Okay, if you don't have any doubts, I'll proceed. You can reserve your doubts. Yeah, thank you. Okay, why blockchain? I have already said that intermediaries like bank itself acts as an intermediary in the Bitcoin transaction. See, what happened in the 2008 was, we have to revisit the history. What happened in the 2008 was, mostly the banks went bankruptcy. So the banks went, they were in a financial chaos. Bank in 2008. I'm talking about the West scenario. I'm not talking about Indian scenario. So India was able to withstand that climate in 2008. But when you look into the history of West, when I say West, I particularly talk about US. So what happened in US was, in the year 2008, the banks started losing their credentials. Banks started losing their reliability. So how it happened, there was a huge economic slowdown. So due to this economic slowdown, what happened was, the loans which the banks have distributed to the people have not started coming back. Probably you can equate the condition to the current scenario. Now what we do, we place requests to the government agencies or banking agencies not to collect loan from us, right? So the similar kind of situation, there was a huge economic slowdown. So people were not able to pay back their loans. So immediately what the banks did was the bank started taking mortgage of the properties for which the people have acquired the loan. It is quite ethical. For example, a person, let's imagine that a person, Peter has taken a home loan from bank A. He has not paid the loan. He has not paid the EMI amount, not paid the EMI. So what will the bank do? Bank A can take mortgage of his home. Is it right or wrong? They can take mortgage and they can auction it and they can get the money and they can remit his balance loan amount. Is it ethical or not? Yeah, it's right.
Yes.
It's right. It's completely ethical. But what this bank A did was, let's imagine Peter also had, say, let's imagine he has taken the home loan for home 1. Peter also has another home called home 2. Bank A, to compensate the loss, what the bank A did was, bank A also took mortgage of the property of home 2 for which he has not taken any loan. Is it ethical?
Not at all.
Not at all. So here where the problem came. So this was the period, again correlate, I'm talking about 2008. In 2008, this was very common prevalent situation which was happening in the West. Again underline, again my disclaimer, I'm talking about complete West scenario, I'm not talking about Indian scenario. So the bank started taking mortgage of the properties for which they have not sought loan, because they would have not repaid it and the interest would have piled up, and to compensate that, they took mortgage of not only another home, I'm just giving you for an example, they started taking mortgage of other properties like car or some other household items. So here where now what will happen? Peter slowly started losing his faith in the bank. It was not only the case of Peter, people like Peter. Faith in bank was slashed. So this is the tipping point where there was a paper when people were losing their faith in the bank, when the people had complaints over the functioning of the bank, there came a paper which talked about no bank. Now you understand, there is a saying, cometh the time, cometh the man. So that was the time where the paper of Satoshi Nakamoto came into existence and people slowly started looking at what is this paper is talking about. So that's how Bitcoin got popular among the entities, popular among the different section of society, because that was the period where people slowly losing their faith over the reliability of the bank. Now I think you can correlate and see this social scenario also played an important role in emergence of Bitcoin and indirectly to the emergence of blockchain. This is how blockchain came into existence. Now, not only that, not only the problem of taking mortgage of loan, there were other issues also. For example, we all know the indirect charge, the overdraft fees, and even recently we heard that we came across in the newspaper that SBI collected around 140 to 150 crore around for not maintaining a minimum balance. Am I right? Even today, banks charge us. Can we say anything about these things? Do we have any right to talk about this? Can we go and ask bank, why are you charging me? Is there any chance?
When most of the banks are doing it, we take it as a
Yes.
in thing and a system.
That is right, sir. Again, I'm going back to our earlier discussion that it is not democratized. And most importantly, not only this, even for example, let's imagine that I'm going to deposit some 5 lakhs in fixed deposit. Will the bank say where they further invest my money?
No, not at all.
No. You have to you have to be happy with the interest what they pay. Again, my dear friends, please understand, I'm not an enemy of bank. I have all my loans available in bank. But what I'm trying to picturize here is, I'm talking about the lack of transparency in the banking functionality. That is what I'm trying to focus here, because that is an important concern which made people to look at some alternative. So you have to understand the background. That is why I'm explaining you all these things. This has nothing related to blockchain, but if you look into this, if you understand these concepts, then you will understand the purpose of why Bitcoin came into existence. From there, how we are embracing blockchain. So what kind of changes the blockchain is going to make. So to understand all those things, you need to know all these stories. That is why I'm sharing it with you.
Sir, I may share one thing. A
Yeah,
shareholder of a public limited company also has no right to inquire as to what things are happening on day-to-day basis. If that is so, then how can we be asking bank, where are you investing? Why this rate of interest? So they have given, take it or leave it.
No, I'm not trying to charge banks. What I'm trying to say, I'm even charging the share. So at least in share, see, there are some reliability. See, I'll talk about shares also. See, when you talk about cryptocurrencies, they are altogether an alternative way of share. But here in share, what happens? Even I'm charging the shareholders or share concepts also. There too, you don't have any transparency. So this is what I'm trying to say. So what I'm trying to say is, I'm not talking anything against bank. What I'm trying to say, that's why I explained to you very clearly. I'm trying to make you understand under what scenario people started looking at cryptocurrencies as an alternate to banking system.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm not trying to charge anybody. So this is the scenario. We live in the scenario. I completely agree with you. But we feel, if I ask you a question like which one is more reliable, whether bank or share market, obvious answer will be bank. So even in a reliable bank, we don't have transparency. That is what I'm trying to say. So I don't say it
You are
as
right.
I'm not complaining it. I'm saying the system. So now you can completely understand when these things were happening around in 2008. So there came a paper which advocated about eliminating the banking system at all. Okay, so people slowly started looking at Bitcoin and what is happening out there. That is the only point. So I won't say, I say again, personally speaking, I don't see Bitcoin or blockchain will completely eradicate the banking system, but I can assure you one thing: by adopting Bitcoin or by adopting the cryptocurrency system in bank, we can add more transparency. I'll explain you in the due course of the session. So again, this is what I was talking about. You can understand the financial crisis was up to $11 trillion throughout the worldwide in 2007 and 8. And that was the period where you could have heard a lot of stories in Indian IT companies where people were losing their jobs. The first job cuts were happening in 2001-2 due to the Twin Tower clash. But the second one, the real job cuts started happening in the year 2007-8, where the entire globe was undergoing this financial crisis. So these are all some more points which we have discussed. Yes, coming to the point. We will take a simple case and we will see how a traditional transaction and a blockchain transaction differs. Let's first look into the traditional transaction. Bob wants to buy a cake from Alice Bakery. He needs to pay Alice in advance. This is quite obvious, right? When Bob wants to order a cake in Alice Bakery, this is Alice, this is Bob. So Bob wants to order for a cake. Alice is the owner of the bakery. So what will, how will it happen? Alice will send the goods to Bob once she has received the money or a proper proof that she will receive it. I mean cash on delivery, something. Either he should have paid it through online or Alice should have a belief on Bob that he will pay cash on delivery. This is the two scenario upon which the traditional transaction takes place. Now let's see. Bob pays on PayPal. So let's see how the transaction happens. So here we are taking into account PayPal also. So Bob pays on PayPal. So PayPal is the intermediary 1. PayPal queries Bob Visa, intermediary 2. Visa queries Bob bank account, intermediate 3. And Bob banks transfer money, so it is getting cleared. Now Alice Bank receives money, intermediate 4. Now PayPal again confirms, so intermediate 5. And Alice finally receives the money. So how many intermediaries are there here in this example?
5.
5. Okay. Do you all accept these are all intermediaries? Because actual transaction has to take place between only Bob and Alice. So whoever comes in between, they are all called intermediaries in this example. So I'm even considering Bob's bank as an intermediary. You can question me, sir, why should Bob transfer through PayPal? Why can't he directly initiate the transaction? Even then, if I reduce this PayPal, still I have Visa as 1, Bob's bank 2, Alice bank 3, and 3 intermediaries there will be there even if we eliminate PayPal. So this is what I'm talking about. What is the problem of having intermediaries? Why are we biased towards intermediaries? Can you say me intermediary or middleman? What is the problem with the intermediary or middleman?
Data will be hacked, maybe in between. Data may be tampered or.
They can be hacked. Very good.
Yeah.
Very good. They can be hacked. That is one chance.
Another
here-
problem is that the
Yeah.
Bob's bank account may be debited,
Okay.
but PayPal does not ultimately pay to Alice.
Okay. You are talking about double spending problem. We will talk about this. Okay. Double spending or non-reliable transaction. Okay.
Non-reliable is more
Okay.
appropriate.
Yeah, I'll keep it as non-reliable. Right now I'll leave this double spending. Okay. Third, again, there may be hidden cost, right? These people cannot work for free. They will have a hidden cost. So these are all the problems. That is why we are biased, or that is why we have a prejudice against this intermediaries. Otherwise, we don't have any issue. So they may have a hidden cost. See, that's what is happening. If you look at you take a small example of a Swiggy or Zomato. If you look at them, they act as an intermediary. They charge you. They don't do a free of cost service. So likewise, Visa will have a hidden cost. PayPal will have a hidden cost. So this is the scenario. Even if we if we are able to remove this intermediary, then even banks will have intermediary. See, for example, there are some banks even in India today. If you transfer IMPS, they charge you at least to the tune of 5 rupees. Am I right? For example, if I transfer 500 rupees, I have to pay 505. Imagine. Yes. So imagine if there happens some 1,000 IMPS transactions per day, 1,000 into 5,000 rupees per day. So 5,000 rupees per day into 30 days. Imagine into 365 days. You can imagine the amount of money transfer which happens. Apart from this, the amount of fraudulent activities which takes place in a credit card or debit card or this kind of intermediary transactions. So these are all the reasons why we advocate or we talk about removing these intermediaries. Now come to blockchain. How does blockchain works? You can see here, Bob wants to send money to Alice over a blockchain network. This is a resemblance of a blockchain network. Now we will see how the transfer is going to happen. Now you see, at the first instance, Bob wants to send money to Alice. This is the first instance. Now what happened? This is represented in the form of a transaction online as a block. Okay. So that transaction is represented online as a block. This is the block which carries where Bob wants to send money to Alice. Third, every block is broadcast to every party on the network. Let's assume that 10 people are there in the network. If there are 10 people in the network, all those 10 people will receive this transaction copy. Okay, they will receive the copy or they will receive this block. Fourth, those in the network will approve the validity of the transaction. See, this we can decide. If 10 people are there, then they can decide who is supposed to validate. For example, only the leader should validate, or all 10 can validate, or only 3 people can validate. So this we can decide. When we are creating the network, we can decide who is going to validate and what are the conditions he needs to check. So then comes fifth. After the validation of the validation, the block is added to the chain. Let's imagine this is the block which is added here. This is the block which consists of the transaction Bob sending money to Alice. Now see the last point. Alice receives her money from Bob. So now Alice has received the money. Here Bob sends money.
How is it that only Alice will get the money? And how is it that others cannot claim if there are 10
No,
people?
no. I'll say you that later. Right now, because each and every entity who are participating in the blockchain will have a unique identity, and they will be giving out their public key and private key. That I'll explain you later, sir. As of now, I'll explain you. Don't worry. So now Alice receives the money. Now the point which we need to look into this, look in this slide is: have we eliminated the intermediaries? Is there any?
Eliminated, but here you told that it will be broadcasted and it will be known to 10 people. On that side, I am having some doubt.
Okay, that 10 people are nobody. I mean, they are not any intermediary. They are all part of our network. For example, let's imagine that today we are conducting this FDP, Atal FDP on blockchain. Let's say 120 people are participating. Today, all 120 of us will be creating a blockchain, madam. I'm going to share the document, or I'm going to share the PPT. I say only the participants, or I say only the participants who have above 60% of the attendance can download the PPT. So is there any intermediary available here? Or those 120 are not part of our blockchain network, those who have attended?
No, correct. Yes.
You get me? So I want to see that 10 is only example. That can be only 5, or it can be 5 lakh, or it can be even 5 million. It all depends on the kind of network what we are going to create. Have I answered?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So you're getting me right. So this is only a eagle point of view. Don't worry. We will slowly go through and we will understand how actual blockchain operates. So this is only, I'm giving you a top view. So this is how the transaction takes place. So now we are able to eliminate intermediaries. Not only intermediaries, if you look at properly, we have also removed the banks. There is no bank. We are directly transferring the money from Bob to Alice. There is no role of bank. This is possible by using Bitcoin based blockchain. Clear? So any doubts so far? Shall I proceed?
Sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you. So this is again one more pictorial representation. You can see a user request for a transaction. A block representing the transaction is created. The block is broadcasted to all the nodes of the network, and all the nodes validate the block and the transaction. See, here it can be all the nodes, or it can be only few nodes. That all depends on the policy decision when we create a blockchain. The block is, once it is validated, it is added to the blockchain, and the transaction is verified and executed. This is a typical workflow or typical flow diagram of any Bitcoin based blockchain transaction. This can also be considered as a normal blockchain transaction. It need not be only for transferring money. It can also be considered for transferring a document. It can also be considered for transferring a video or audio or an image or anything else. Okay. So now we are coming to the important part of our blockchain, that is block. What is a block? What is a block? We are going to see that. See, this fingerprint is used. Some authors advocate using or equating a block identification with respect to human fingerprint. Some don't advocate that. Let's not bother. I'll also give you a justification why am I using this fingerprint later. But right now, what does a block consist of? Now you know what is a block. So blockchain is nothing but a place where different blocks are added. The blocks are created for transactions. What will be the constituent of a block? A block will consist of majorly, as of now, 3 elements. One is data, that is the whatever data we are going to feed. The previous hash, I'll talk about this previous hash bit later, and the current hash value. These are all the 3 components of any block which is part of a blockchain network. Right? I'm repeating again, the respective data, the previous hash, and the current hash. How does this previous hash and current hash are generated? I'll explain you. You can see here, the first ever block created in the blockchain network is called as a Genesis block. This first ever block we create is known as a Genesis block or mother block. The speciality of this Genesis block or mother block is that never gets changed. It never gets changed. Throughout the ecosystem of blockchain, let's imagine that we are going to add 1,000 blocks to this chain. Even then, the first ever block created will never get changed. Okay. Now let's come to this previous hash and hash. How the calculation happens is, I'll go here. Let's take the data and the previous hash. These are fed to a hashing algorithm. We use a hashing algorithm here. I'll explain you in the next slide. Hashing algorithm. That hashing algorithm will give us a value of current hash of the block. How does this previous hash will come? The previous hash is obtained from the hash value of the previous block. Can you understand this logic? Please do let me know if you don't understand.
It's just like a linked list.
It's almost like a linked list, but in linked list, we merely join the nodes, but here we join them with a cryptographic link. It's not a, it's not an ordinary link. Yeah, it's a cryptographic link.
Yeah,
For example, yeah, I'll again draw. This is, let's imagine this is the Genesis block, that is block number 0. And this is block number 1. Now let's imagine the data available in block 0 is high. Okay. The previous hash will be 0, 0, 0 because it doesn't have any previous block. This is the first ever block. So how will they calculate the current hash value? This input data high and this previous hash value 0 will be fed to a hashing algorithm. And this algorithm will throw an output. That is the current hash value of this block 0. That let's imagine that value is A, B, C, D, something. A is B, 0, 0. Now, when I calculate the hash value of this block 1, what will happen is, now the previous hash value is AB, 0, 0. So the data is, we can say hello. Hello is the data. The previous hash value is AB, 0, 0, 0. Now I need to calculate the current hash value. So what will I do? I'll feed these two values to the hashing algorithm, and that hashing algorithm will throw me some output, random output 0652F. Can you understand this logic? Are you all able to follow this logic?
Yes, sir.
Yes, okay. I'll show a small demo here, and then again I'll further decode how this hashing algorithm operates. 1 minute. Can you all see my screen now?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
sir.
The link is
Yes, sir.
if you are sitting in a desktop or a laptop, you can also type this blockchaindemo.io. 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 You can also type that. Can you see a block here? What I'm going to do is, this is the Genesis block. See some randomly created Genesis block. Welcome to the blockchain demo. This is the data. Welcome to the blockchain demo. This FDP on blockchain. Why? Welcome to the FDP on blockchain by Mahindra Engineering College. This is the data which I have given. And you can see here previous hash is 0 because this is the Genesis block. First ever block. So obviously there will be no previous block. So previous hash value will be 0. Now it has generated some hash value. I'm going to add up here. Okay, I'm going to add a new block. See here. I have added a new block. I'm going to type something like how was the session. Okay, now I added a new block, but the point to be noted here is it randomly generated some hash value. We will see how these hash values are generated, but before that, look into the previous hash value. You can see here the previous hash value is derived from the Genesis block 76700 76700. Are you all able to get this? Now, do you understand the logic?
Yes, yes.
Yes, sir. We tried.
Okay. Yeah, you tried.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
If I add a new block, what will be the previous hash value of that new block?
68.
This block hash value is the
Yes.
previous block.
Very good. That's all.
Previous hash value.
Hash.
Very good. That's all. You understood this. This is how don't worry how this hash is generated. What is this value? All those things I'll explain now. This is how a blockchain is created. So each and every block is linked to its previous block. Okay. Okay. I'll again go back and I'll share my PPT. So this is what we have seen. Now you can see this is how the blocks are created. So mother block, the next block, I hope you all saw that in demo. This is how the blockchain is created. So they are connected like as one of you mentioned about linked list. It follows it will resemble like a linked list, but this link is created by using a cryptography. That is the specialty. This link is created by using a cryptography. Cryptographic links are created. So cryptographic links are created. I hope you all can understand this logic. So you can see here, since it is a Genesis block, its previous hash is 0. That is what we saw in the demo. It takes the previous, the current hash of 1 will be the previous hash of 2. And current hash value of 2 will be the previous hash value of 3 and so on. So someone was chatting SHA-256. Don't worry, I'll be coming to it. The next slides will be, we will be discussing about SHA-256. So yes, you can see here. What is this hashing? How hashing happens in the blockchain network? You can see here, we are using the concept of SHA-256. What is SHA-256? SHA-256 is nothing but secured hash algorithm. This was given to us by National Security Agency of US. Initially, they used this SHA-256 algorithm for defense communications, but later on, even today, it is an open source algorithm. If you want, you can download and you can use the SHA-256 concepts in your applications. What is the specialty of this SHA-256 algorithm? You can see here, the specialty of this SHA-256 algorithm is it converts any arbitrary length input into a fixed length output. That is the beauty of this SHA-256 algorithm. Any arbitrary length input. Your input may be a arbitrary length. It may be of any length, but the output of your SHA algorithm will be of 64 hexadecimal characters. Hexadecimal characters. You can see here 64 hexadecimal characters. So each hexadecimal character accounts to 4 binary bit values. So 0, 8, 4, 2, 1 format. So that's how one value here represents 8, 4, 2, 1 format. So 16 into 4, it gives you 256. That's why it is called SHA-256 algorithm. So secure hash algorithm, the beauty of this secure hash algorithm is it converts any type of input. For example, your input is a text, or your input is a video, or your input is audio, or it is of any format. It gives you a fixed 64 hexadecimal character as an output. That is the beauty of this SHA-256 algorithm. So this algorithm is used both in, you'll be studying about Ethereum, both in Ethereum based blockchain, as well as still it is used in Bitcoin based blockchain network. So Ethereum based blockchain network is also, they have not completely migrated to SHA-512. They are also talking about using SHA-512, but not yet completely done. And other algorithm is SHA-3 is also contemplated. We will also see why should we only stick on to SHA-256 algorithm. Is there any other algorithm which can be considered as a candidate? Yes, we will see in the next slides. But remember now, why this SHA-256 algorithm? They generate a unique value. That's why we equate this to a fingerprint. You all know, statistically it is said that the duplication among the fingerprint, the probability of duplication among the human fingerprint is 1 among 60 million people. So among 1 among 60 million people, there is a chance of duplication with respect to human fingerprint. So likewise, they claim that SHA-256 algorithm is also generates a unique value for a given input, and the probability occurrence of duplication is very less. I won't say it will never generate a duplicate value, but I again quote my word, the probability of occurrence of duplication by using SHA-256 is very less. That is what I'm trying to say. In reality, the Bitcoin network is a live network which is operating from Jan 2009. They are using SHA-256. Till now, they have not encountered any duplication value. That is the one witness where we can understand the value of this SHA-256 algorithm. Are you all able to understand what is SHA-256 algorithm?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, fine. Okay. We will also see a small demo, but before that, I'll explain you the concepts. Okay. Now I said that we can think of using any hashing algorithm. See, there are a lot of other digest algorithms are also available. So the hashing algorithm belongs to the family of digest algorithms. So MD5 is there. But the irony is that MD5 algorithms were already broken. That's why they have not used MD5 here. But if you feel like you want to use MD5, you can use. Or if you feel like you want to use any other form of algorithm for this purpose, you can use. But you can use any algorithm which satisfies some 5 features which are listed as a part of this blockchain networks. What are they? The first feature the required algorithm need to satisfy is it should be one way. What is one way? It is easy to calculate the hash of a data. It isn't possible to decode the original data from the hash. Imagine you have this data. Will you be able to identify what will be the input of this data? Is it possible? Is it possible?
No, sir.
No.
No, sir.
No. Likewise, again, yeah, that's why we always equate this to human fingerprint. For example, someone's fingerprint is there. Okay. Will you be able to trace back and find out how will he look like? or what will be his color, skin color, or what will be his hair color and so on? Is it possible for us to traverse back from fingerprint? Is it possible?
Until and unless a huge data has been created in the past, but which is not done. So practically no.
Practically it's no actually. See, your fingerprint acts as a authentication for you. But what I'm trying to say is you will track back and find out the human characteristics of a human being through the fingerprint. That is the fact. So likewise here also it should be one way. It can be a document or it can be a video or audio. That's as I already mentioned. So for any given input it will generate 64 hexadecimal standard characters but from this input you should not be able to traverse back. That is what I'm talking about, one way. So the common example, very you can consider it as a toy example. With juice blender we can make juice out of the fruit but not the reverse. Okay, once I made a juice out of the fruit, I will not be able to trace back and create the fruit again. Just for fun, don't consider this as a serious example. I have given you the live examples. So second characteristics or second requirement, it should be deterministic. So that is, for example, hashing algorithm always produces the same output for same set of input. Otherwise we will not be able to trace. For a given set of input, it should generate the same output. For example, even by adding one value, it will completely generate me some other output. You can see here, this is document. I have added +1 to this document. You can see the range of difference. They are not linear. Randomly a new value is generated. That is, for a given input, it should always generate the same output. That is what deterministic is all about. I'll show you a small demo. Don't worry. I'll say the next feature and I'll go to the demo. The third one is it should be able to compute fast, because we all know we are performing a digital transaction. So the transaction should happen very fast. It cannot, in name of calculating an algorithm, it cannot take much time. So it has to compute fast. Another important aspect, avalanche effect. So this avalanche effect, you can see any small change in the input data would produce an unpredictably different hash as output. If you look back in the literature, avalanche effect is something which we normally see the person who is climbing the mountain or the person who is walking on the glaciers. For even a small wrong foot, there is a danger, there is a likely danger that they can fall from the top. Or with respect to a glacier walking, if someone is walking on the glacier, if he keeps a wrong foot, then there is a chance that he may get collapsed and get into the trap. So the point to be taken here is, even for a slightest, very minimal change, there will be unpredictable change in the output. This is what avalanche effect is all about. So I'll show you a small demo. 1 minute. I'll stop sharing and I'll go to the browser. Okay, can you all go to this? You can go to Google. You can type Anders Brownworth demo on blockchain. I'll repeat again. Anders Brownworth demo on blockchain. Or you can type andersbrownworth.com/blockchain. Have you all done? Anders, ANDERS, Brown, BROWN, Worth, WORTH, without any gap, andersbrownworth.com/blockchain. Are you all there? Thank you, sir. So can you open this demo? Okay, what was the first property we saw? We saw it is one way, right? For example, I'm going to type something here. Welcome to Welcome to FDP on blockchain. You can see here, I have typed welcome to FDP on blockchain. I said one way. By looking at this hashing value, again, we all know this is nothing but the hash value is generated by using SHA-256 algorithm. This is a GitHub open source demo. Most probably, whenever you go for any blockchain session, more importantly, they will show you this demo. This Anders Brownworth is a researcher attached with the Stanford University. He came up with this kind of demo, and this demo is also available in GitHub. If you want to tailor make for yourself, you can also take the code and you can also work on it. But as of now, I'm using it directly from Google. So you can see here, this is one way. By looking at this hash value, any point of time, you will not be able to understand what is given inside. That is what I'm trying to say. Can you understand this? This is one way. Now I said about deterministic, right? Okay, we will see. I'm removing this. I'm again pasting it. Please remember 2BC85. This is the equivalent for welcome to FDP on blockchain. Now see here, first we have seen what is one way. Now I'm going to show you a demo for deterministic, the second feature. I'm removing this. Now it is showing me some other hash value. Now I'm going to paste it again. Again, you can see 2BC85. This is what deterministic is all about. The third one, fast computation, you all know, even before we paste or even before we type, constantly it keeps on changing. That is the fast computation. Now the fourth one is avalanche effect. Please do listen here. I'm just going to keep a full stop here. I'm not going to change any content. I'm just going to keep a full stop here. Look at the change which happened in the entire hash value generated. This is what avalanche effect is all about. Even for a smallest, slightest change, unpredictably, the complete hash value will get changed. Can you all see this? Or can you have you all done that? Not only that, you can also try with something else. Not even full stop. Increase a space. Just I'm going to increase a space before this blockchain. I'm going to add one more space. See to what extent the hash value has changed. Again, I'm coming back. Deterministic. Once I have the same content, the same hash value will be generated. Are you all clear? Any doubts here?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. No, yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you. So again, I'll go back. So we have seen the avalanche effect also. Now there is one more, fifth requirement. I said 5 requirements. We have seen 4 requirements and we have also seen the demo. The fifth requirement is a very, very important requirement. We assume that there will be no collusion. But even with respect to human fingerprint, we saw 1 among 60 million will be, there is a chance of duplication. What happens if a duplication occurs? Is there any solution for that? You can see here, since the length of hash is fixed, theoretically there is a chance of collusion because the hash length is fixed as 64. So there is a chance. Mathematically, there is a, again, if you want to work on only the cryptography side of a blockchain, there is a wonderful course on cryptography for blockchain, which is offered in Coursera by University of Pennsylvania. You can also look into it. Princeton University. Princeton University offers you mathematical for blockchain. You can also enroll for that course and you can learn. Wonderful course where you will understand the nuances of all cryptographic values used in the blockchain. Coming back here, since the values are fixed at 64, there is a likely chance that the collusion may occur. What is collusion? Where 2 different input producing the same hash for a given hashing algorithm. So for example, for input 1, 2, 3, the hash value is A. For input 1, 9, 8, the hash value is A. If we encounter this scenario, I'm just assuming this is what duplication is all about. How to encounter this duplication? Way back in 1970s itself, there is a mathematical principle called pigeonhole principle. It came into existence in 1970s. You can Google and read a lot of story about pigeonhole principle. What is this pigeonhole principle states? You can see here, there are 9 holes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. If 9 pigeons comes, we can very well accommodate them in the holes. What happens if the 10th pigeon comes? We cannot say you have to go back. We don't have a space. We cannot say like that. In a lighter sense, Aditi Devo Bhava. So we have to accommodate that guest also. How can you accommodate him? You can see this guy. He is the 10th pigeon. We have to accommodate them in the available space. That is the solution. I'm not going to go for a deliberative explanation about this pigeonhole principle. I leave it to you. This is a potential research area where you can throw light upon. This is a very potential research area. How to handle duplications in blockchain. As of now, we have pigeonhole principle. That is what is being used. But fortunately, as I stated earlier, Bitcoin based blockchain has till now not encountered any duplication. Okay. So now, if collision occurs naturally, that is fine. We can understand. There may be a chance that it may occur. But if somebody tries to create a collision artificially, this is the factor which we need to actually look into. You can see here. Artificial collision is the process of forging the input so that it produces a hash value exactly the same as the one which is generated by a different set of input. For example, I am uploading my mark sheet. Let's imagine this document is my mark sheet. Imagine I am a university rank holder. It's all only imagination. I was not a university rank holder. So now, if someone, let's imagine some hacker, he wants to project this mark as his. So what he can do is, he can exactly try to generate the same hash value. Now what will happen? He may try to claim the credential as a university rank holder. Now you understood the danger of this artificial collision. So how are we going to handle this? Don't worry, we will see the answer in the forthcoming sessions. I think we have touched 11:25. I'm going to stop here. Do you have any doubts so far? Any doubts?
No.
Yeah. Okay, done. So I'll just show you the slides, what I'm going to have or what we are going to discuss after this break. So you can see here. Then I'll be discussing about immutable ledger. What is immutability? We will take a use case and we will see what is distributed, the role of distributed network in blockchain, how it operates, how a block is inserted, and how are we going to handle a malicious. I said about artificial collision, right? How are we going to handle that? And what is mining? What is Bitcoin mining? How it works? And consensus algorithm. We will see two general problem and Byzantine fault tolerance, how they operate, how do the consensus protocol handles this, and these are all the some consensus protocol. Then we will see what are the different types of blockchain and framework, challenges, startup companies, and so on. Okay, so these are all the things which are stored for today. I'm just showing you as a teaser, that's all, because I want you to come back. That's why I'm showing you all those slides. So thank you as of now. And we will, sir, Kannan sir.
Thank you, Balaji.
Sir, can I stop now? We will resume the session by 12. Am I right, sir?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kannan and Mr. Balaji.
Thank you,
sir.
sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.